Just comb your hair, go and wash your face. It's been a real long time since you've seen the light of day. So let thoughts come as they may, feeding it parade. Everybody all smiles when you're back in the seat again. On board the Penny Express to a beautiful darkness. It's full steam ahead to ride the rails to our next destination. Yeah!
Welcome everyone, it's Mo from Mo in the Deep End, and for the first time ever I am going to do a bit of untangling before a trial. Yes, this case, the Secret Lover murder trial, is so counterfusing and redonkulous that I needed to break this down so we could kind of all get what was going on. Now, we are going to finish up the hearing after I break this kind of down as to what happened. But holy fazolies, this case is just crazy. So I decided to break this down and I'll kind of walk you guys through sort of the timeline, the cast of characters, and things like that. And then we'll go back to the hearing. I might need to revise some of this after that, but you know, had I thought about it, we'd finish the hearing, but you know, that I was too busy working on drawing. All right, so let's start with our Love Quad Squad from Hell. So in the middle of all this, we have Brandon. Now, I still cannot find an age for Brandon, but he does look to be in his early to mid-20s, if not late teens. In his emotional maturity, probably early toddler division, from what we know. Now, Brandon is in the center of this love quadrangle, which again defies all probability once we see a picture of Brandon. Now, Brandon meets his wife, Jessica, and his wife, Jessica, thinks that Brandon is, single, but living with two lady, roommates. Now, we meet the wrong side chicks. You've got Kendra and her baby, Brandon's baby. And you've got Victoria, who Brandon is boffing also. Now, another important guy to know is Mr. Heron. Now, Mr. Heron is Victoria's grandfather, and Brandon lives with Victoria and Kendra and her baby in Mr. Heron's pool house for reasons. Now, all of this is kind of the state of affairs. Brandon living with Victoria, Kendra, his baby, at the pool house. That's kind of the natural state of being. But then Brandon met Jessica, and somehow things changed because Kendra and Brandon were supposed to be getting married, but this past year, 2024, he and Jessica got married. Now, I don't know what's going on with that one and all that shenanigans, but Brandon and Jessica decided to get married. Well, before Jessica, the wife, moved into this whole pool house, Brandon decided to cook up a mastermind scheme, a real gem of a thought as to how he was going to explain Kendra and her baby. Well, they, chit-chatted and decided that they were going to be brother and sister, and that the baby was Brandon's niece, but, as brother and sister, he had no part in the parentage. Now, it wasn't shortly after wife Jessica moves in with Brandon and sister wife and Victoria that there must have been some sort of awkward situation where Jessica walked in on Brandon boffing his sister. And she realized, oh, no, I'm out of here. Now, somehow, despite this, separation of a little bit when Jessica found out that, well, Brandon, thank goodness, wasn't, doing incest by any means. He was still cheating on her. Now, I do believe that Jessica at this time was pregnant with Brandon's child, which might have, pushed her to go back with him. Now, unfortunately for Jessica, in addition to being married to Brandon the Dud, she experienced a stillbirth within the time of their marriage. Now, Victoria had dealt with the loss of a child too. Now, at this point, Jessica knows that Kendra and him have a past, but she is not aware that Victoria and him are also screwing. So Victoria and Jessica bond over the shared loss of a child, become very good friends and, really bond, really get a soul connection to the point that, Jessica feels deeply wounded and betrayed when she walks in on Brandon, well, in mid-thrust with Victoria. So she decides to go to her mother's house on July 31st. She is done with this. She is absolutely moving out. This is the final straw. Just will not do anymore. And she goes to her mom's house. Now, Brandon must have followed her to her mother's house on the 31st because there was what the police have labeled as a disturbance of some kind. They didn't label it DV, and it wasn't labeled as that. In fact, I will say that at the hearing, Scott Westcott, the cop that was doing the testifying, was a little bit fidgety about, why it wasn't classified as that, or, why weren't things looked into as far as DV, considering Brandon does have a history with, I believe, both wrong side chicks as far as laying hands on them. So I don't know what the paperwork is, and South Carolina does not really release a lot of paperwork to the public before trials. So I will try to find out more about that, but he did seem a little cagey to me about that. But we know on the 31st of July that Jessica leaves that altercation, disturbance in an ambulance. Now, it seems like it was for mental health evaluation or hold, possibly. All the while, Jessica is on the way to the hospital and kind of in the hospital, possibly being treated. She is texting Brandon. Now, seeing as how Brandon is allegedly a controlling arsehat, he was probably saying, I can't believe you're making a big deal out of this. You're going to blow up my future if you get me caught up on charges, all this ridiculous stuff. Again, but Jessica, for whatever reason, and I really wish she wouldn't have, decides to go back to the pool house on August the 1st or the 2nd. They weren't really clear on which day that was. Now, considering they are going to be introducing Ring camera footage, I am not quite sure why we're not sure about the day, but maybe it's a Southern thing, like maybe actual dating dates is against their religion. I don't know. But whatever day it was, August 1st or 2nd, Jessica returned to the pool house. Now, at the pool house were Brandon, Victoria, and the minor baby child. Now, I do not believe Mr. Heron was in residence at the main house. We see Jessica entering the pool house. We do not see her walk back out. Or at least that's what they claim they have Ring footage of. We don't see any of this at the hearing. Brandon confronts Jessica. Jessica must have said something like, I'm leaving you. I'm done with this. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm leaving. Brandon couldn't accept this. Now, Victoria claims that she saw Brandon throttle Jessica to death, and that the baby was seeing all of this as well. Now, Kendra was at work. So when she gets back home, Brandon and Victoria have already gone to Lowe's or not Lowe's, to Walmart to get, you know, a wheelie bin, like one of those totes that has wheels on it. And they placed Jessica in that tote. And then when Kendra got home, now according to Kendra's statement, Brandon and Victoria tell her what happened to Jessica and that she is going to need to help clean this up. So all three of the wrong side crew, the wrong side triangle, now go to, Walmart to get your handy dandy murder, cleanup kit. You get the bleach, you get the sponges, and, shovel, all of that jazz. They drive around, trying to figure out a place to put Jessica's body because they're, have about 3 brain cells between them. Now they decide that Mr. Heron also has property near kind of like a lake rock quarry, from what I understood from the testimony. They decide to go a little bit off site, like there's a place to park, and kind of about a quarter mile, not even that, they decide to take her body there. Now they try to shovel at this rock quarry area. Now obviously they didn't realize that, clay is a thing. So, it was a hard work. They aren't used to hard work, something like that. So they decided to burn Jessica's remains, or at least some of them. All that was found at the burn pile when the police got there was a jawbone and several teeth. Now that was enough to identify the remains as Jessica's. Now there were separate remains, and it seems like they had a dual kind of method that they were going to use to dispose of these remains. So they had also gotten a bucket and some Quikrete. So some of Jessica's remains were put in this bucket and Quikrete, maybe again another quarter a mile just towards the edge of the property at the pool house. So this is August 1st to the 2nd. Now people start wondering where Jessica is. Now Brandon and the wrong side girls tell everyone, look, don't get all Twitter-pated. She is known to run off. She is no good. She done runned off from her marriage. I mean, look, I'm not going to look for her because she done runned off. That's basically the party line that the, wrong side triad is using. Well, Jessica's birthday's in the middle here, and her mother on September the 10th, after Jessica didn't contact her. Now, there were some text messages sent in this period in between that were purportedly from Jessica's phone, but they were not her normal typing style, no emojis, long sentences, very odd. So it is believed that Brandon was using Jessica's phone to contact her mother to try to, again, just take that, suspicion off of him. Well, September 10th, Jessica's mother has had enough. She calls the police. Now, September 14th, the wrong side triad decide that things are getting a little too hot here. So they go on a multi-state kind of tour from Georgia to just everywhere. They were just driving here, there, yonder because it was getting too hot. Well, October 1st is when they find the remains, and when these three finally start to come clean. Now, unbeknownst to the, mental geniuses that are the dark side triad, Mr. Heron didn't really trust Kendra. There had apparently been an instance of time where Brandon and Kendra had just driven one of the cars that he lets them use at the pool house to Georgia and couldn't be found. So Mr. Heron decided, because I'm paying money on these cars and, I'm in charge of them and I can't trust any of them, I'm going to add trackers. Well, at September 14th is when he, Mr. Heron, gives the state police and SLED the written and verbal consent to be able to go ahead and use that app to track these morons. Now, after the morons come back from their multi-state vacation from, the heat, they go directly back, not even return to home, to the fire pit. And in the intervening time, because the sled hadn't found the fire pit just yet, they had put a trail cam up to see if they would go back to this area where the tracking location said they had been in upwards of 10 to 15 times between August the 1st and September the 10th. So SLED wanted to see if they would go back and maybe show them where the remains were or where something was. And of course, Larry, Curly, and Mo just go right back and to make a beeline for the burn pit. And that's what we call, a touchdown, I do believe. Now, we haven't learned what remains were in the buckets. We have learned that Brandon, beyond being a controlling, lays hands on females, just douche and everything else. In this time right here, so September 10th through September 14th, decided to get his ridiculous behind, along with the wrong side chicks, on television, holding the remains of his stillborn daughter, begging for her to return, for Jessica to return. Because now so they've all admitted, the wrong side gang have all admitted their involvement in police statements. So, and they're all three being tried together as of right now. Now, Brandon is facing, first degree murder. First degree murder. I have it written down. First degree murder, then, let's see, misprisonment, obstruction of justice, and several other crimes. The wrong side chicks are facing accessory after the fact, both of them, misprisonment, and obstruction of justice, because they were lying to the police from September 10th through September 14th. Then they decided to go on their little sojourn to find the truth or whatever, until October the 1st, when the remains were found and identified as Jessica's, and they were arrested. They all decided to come clean. So it's not so much that Victoria was there when he did it, or that Kendra, came home and found out. It's that neither of them called the police, and they helped, destroy the body, burn the remains, things like that. So, though I hope that's kind of made it a little easier to understand this case. Obviously, there is more, that we're probably going to learn. But I hope this kind of explained it a little more so we kind of know who's going where and, what's going on. This is, there are not many, actual sort of articles about this, and I don't know if that's because of South Carolina's not releasing a lot of information prior to the trial, or what the reasoning is for that. I am not quite sure, but we do have. Let me adjust this. I was trying to get my easel to work, and I, of course, instead of setting it up, threw it on the ground because I'm Grace. I am like Grace Kelly in all things. So my son was like, "What were you clattering?" And I was like, "Dang, child, I don't yell at you all the time when you're making noises." He's like, "You are being so loud, and I am trying to get my beauty sleep." He's a ham. They're so excited because my two youngest boys rarely get a snow day. and my other children who go to the public school are always getting e-learning days. Well, today, for the first time ever since they're going to this different school, they get a snow day when the other kids don't. So they are having like the time of their lives, just gloating about it to their siblings. Like, we don't have to go to school today. And my middle son is like, I'm going to go get my beauty sleep. And I just thought, okay, Mr. DeVille. It's like, anything else you're going to do, Duchess? Like, what are we doing here? Beauty sleep and everything else? Are we going to do facials too? Yes. So we are back. Let me get closed captions up. And if, I'm going to take him back just a little bit because I know there was a bit where I thought I was streaming, but I actually wasn't. So I will be taking more notes, and I will update the pre-trial board if I got some things wrong. But that was the information that I'd gathered while I was taking notes for the hearing. Alrighty, and actually have sound on.
It read very strange. It was a long run-on sentence, and she also said that one of her sons had received a similar text message. Went to her residence, made contact with one of her minor sons, read the text message he had received, and it was very similar to the text message that Ms. LeVar had received, other than this. The message he received had some punctuation in it, and the other indication from Ms. LeVar was that Jessica typically used a number of emojis. Hers was long run-on sentence, no emojis, and her son had some punctuation and emojis, but it read very similarly.
At any point in time, did you find out that Mr. Barnes regularly used Ms. Tippett, Ms. Mims, and Ms. Barnes' phones?
And he apparently used all three of their phones as well as his.
And were you aware that y'all?
And that's another sign of control. He didn't use their phones. He probably didn't let them have their phones. And what I mean by that is, hey, I need to go somewhere. Can I have my phone? Well, why do you need your phone? Are you trying to talk to other guys? Is that why you want your phone? It seems really interesting you want your phone now. I mean, so if I look at your phone, are there going to be other guys? You've had despite the fact that he probably controlled all these women's phones, he accused each and every one of them of cheating. I have no doubt. I have no doubt either that, in my opinion, he'd be just the kind of douche that would, limit or keep his women's phone so that they couldn't, and probably texted as if they were them, probably got on, and any male name that he found on there, are you, probably trying to see if he was doing things with them. So that doesn't shock me. Look, I dealt with that one time in my life. Never, ever, ever, ever again. No. Now I know to use, let's say I have cast iron, cookware for dual purposes now. It's very southern of me. Allegedly in Minecraft, everyone knows you keep cast iron around for the best biscuits.
You also did some of that with your social media?
Yes, ma'am.
At any point in time, did you realize that when you were saying that Ms. Tippett and Mr. Barnes went to Walmart to buy the plastic container, the shovel, and the Coca-Cola, you stated that they used Ms. Mims' debit card, correct? She was not there, correct?
She was not there when that purchase was made.
And that appeared to have taken place while she was at work.
Correct. Yes, she was not there.
Prior to her learning about any of this. As far as you can tell, that was prior to her learning about any of this.
I don't know when she learned of the event.
All right.
Would have been after she returned home, but I can't tell you how long after she returned home that she was told.
At any point in time, did you notice that Mr. Barnes was funneling large amounts of money from Ms. Mims' account to his own?
What we found through the bank records was it seemed like as Ms. Mims would get paid, transfers were made from her account into Brandon Barr's account.
Was he doing that with anyone else?
Jessica Barnes had very little money, and we didn't see any indication that there was anything from Victoria Tippett.
Okay. And do you know how many jobs Ms. Mims was forced to work?
I believe she was working 2 jobs, at an Arby's, and then she had just started a job at a diner or some type of eating establishment on Clemson University.
And were you aware that at least one of her coworkers made a statement regarding injuries that she constantly saw on Ms. Mims?
Yes, one of the coworkers said that she had seen some type of injury on her body.
During the course of your investigation, did you learn that Mr. Barnes required?
Crystal, I can give you a quick pitch, and then if you want for a little bit of a more detailed one, I did do a murder board at the beginning of this video for the first 15-ish minutes. But Brandon Barnes was in a relationship with 3 women: his wife, Kendra, and Victoria. His wife moved into this kind of 3-people house thinking that these 2 other women were Brandon's roommate and sister with his niece. Well, Kendra, the sister with his niece, turned out to be, Brandon's girlfriend, and that niece was actually his baby. Now, Jessica found out about this at some point fairly early in their marriage, but I do believe that she was pregnant and wanted to try to make it work, so maybe establish different boundaries. Now, unfortunately for Jessica, she did end up having a stillbirth, and then really started bonding with the other roommate, Victoria, who had also lost a child. Well, I am sure that that friendship was betrayed yet again when she found Brandon sleeping with Victoria. So that really was the end of the marriage. That happened around July 31st of this year. Well, there was a, alleged DV, or at least domestic disturbance at Jessica's mother's house involving Brandon and Jessica, where Jessica left in an ambulance. It does seem to be more of a mental health thing, not DV related as far as I can tell. Jessica decides to go back to the marital home to pick up her stuff and, start a new life. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I'm out of here, kind of thing. Brandon did not like this. He throttled her to death. Victoria and the love child were at the house and saw what happened. And then when Kendra came home, all 3 of these jokers worked together to dispose of the body in several places. It wasn't until September the 10th that Jessica was called in or reported missing to authorities, and that was through Jessica's mother. Now, the family had been receiving several text messages that were purportedly from Jessica's phone, but they were not in the style of her writing, and it is believed that Brandon was writing these text messages. Police were able to catch, these 3 brain trusts pretty quickly because the pool house and the cars that they use were not owned by any of them, but instead by Victoria's grandfather, and he had tracking installed on the cars because he didn't trust any of them, basically. And kind of tracked them all to the burn pit where they found some remains. And then all over their travels to get away from suspicion because people were being mean to them about, not reporting Jessica missing. Well, now they're all three on trial. The two women are on trial for obstruction of justice, accessory after the fact, imprisonment, and one more thing. No, I just said them out of order. Brandon is, of course, charged with murder. Now, I do believe that they're doing the two females during this hearing because I think it took longer to get Brandon. But at this time, all three defendants are being tried together. I do not know if that is going to, the case is going to get severed and maybe Brandon is going to be tried by himself. I am not sure, but that's what I know so far.
Ms. Mims to either wear a headset or keep her phone on all the time so that he could listen to everything she did.
From the statements they've given me, while all of them, while Brandon was at work, he would be constantly on the phone with the parties, and Ms. Mims, while she was at work, she was apparently on the phone as well.
You stated earlier in your testimony that Ms. Mims rarely said much at all.
Yes, ma'am. Very differential.
And that was your experience with her as a whole?
Throughout the investigation, yes. Only time I ever really saw any type of emotion from her was in October 2023 when I had made contact with her, Jessica Brevard at the time, and Brandon Barnes.
All right, now, do you know who had the relationship first with Mr. Barnes, where this began?
Ms. Mims.
Okay. And do you know where that occurred? It's where it started.
No.
So, do you know when Ms. Barnes was introduced into this equation?
Toward the end of 2023.
Okay. And then, are you aware of when Ms. Tippett became involved?
July, like a couple weeks before this happened.
All right.
Ms. Watts, I just want to make sure, are you handling both cases?
No, I'm not.
I'll be quick, Your Honor.
Well, when she mentioned Ms. Tippett, I just wanted to make sure that y'all were, you were handling both cases while,
No.
I wanted to stay as close to the charges as possible. I know I've allowed to go far afield, and I've allowed the solicitor's office, and I don't know that you're not calling another a buy-in.
This is our only witness, Your Honor.
So I just want to make sure, just want to make sure.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate that. All right, so you did say that all three of the parties were at Lowe's, correct?
Yes, sir. Seen
And,
those surveillance.
all right, do you know who drove that day?
No, I do not.
So, you stated that Ms. Mims was not there during the commission of this crime.
Yes, ma'am.
And you said that during her interview, she gave you information that she knew what had happened?
During your interview, I was not present during the interview. I watched the interview recording. She ultimately initially stated that Jessica had left of her own volition. Nobody knew where she was, and then eventually told us what she had been told.
And what she had been told was that Jessica committed suicide.
Yes, ma'am.
And she said that numerous times?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Miss Mims never said that she knew that Miss Barnes was murdered.
Yeah, no, because she wasn't there. She said,
She's still being charged for accessory after the fact because she helped move the damn body. Like, But she didn't tell the truth, and I mean, she wasn't even there, so why does she even have to do this? Because she helped these jerky faces, hide the body. She didn't say anything to anyone that, hey, I know about this, crime. Hey, my friends are felons and come get them. She didn't do any of that. That's why she's being charged. I get that she's like, again, unfortunate angle for that, you know, thing. But seriously, ma'am, that she's not charged with, lying to police because she said that, she didn't know the exact way she was unalived. She is, she lied to police when she said that, oh, Jessica ran away. We have no idea where she went.
Again, she was telling us what she was told. She had disappeared, she had killed herself.
And did you ever uncover any evidence that Miss Mims was married to Brandon Barnes?
No, Mr. Barnes and Ms. Mims had.
This defense attorney is giving my mother hope that my face would not be considered contempt of court, because y'all know my face is underlined and bold when it comes to when I hear something stupid. I just can't. This happens for reasons I cannot uncompel myself to do, and it's very hard to contain. Like, even because it's like. And, I used to get in trouble for doing it, but I'm sorry. It's an involuntary reaction to stupid. At first, people thought I was being disrespectful. I'm just having an allergic reaction, so respect my health. Damn. Just kidding.
Obtained a wedding license, but had never.
Because just getting a marriage license isn't enough to get married in the state of South Carolina.
That they never had gotten married.
Did you ever...
Are we really arguing? Like, look, she only got super almost legally engaged, okay? I get it. I just don't think we need to be that sassy about the fact that your client didn't marry, Banjo Boy from Deliverance all grown up. Well, actually, I would be bragging if I didn't marry Banjo Boy all grown up. Touche, ma'am, as you were.
Uncover any information that the child that Miss Mims had with Mr. Barnes was a secret of any kind?
Not that we're aware of.
Were you aware
It was a secret because they said it was his niece.
that Miss Barnes was present when Miss Mims gave birth?
No, ma'am.
What? Wait, what? Okay, I am so... No, stop adding layers of redonkulousness. Was Jessica aware of the harem? What in the name of all that is FDLS? I mean, seriously. She was at the... This case... Look, y'all, I don't know. We're just... Again, this is something that Kendra is saying, and I do want us to keep in mind that Kendra is sitting here and looking at some fairly serious jail time. So will Kendra maybe present all facts in the light most favorable to Kendra? Probably. Maybe she was at the birth because she thought that this was, Brandon's niece. Now, I find that to stretch the limits of credulity. But again, this is, Kendra saying this, and Kendra is looking to get in as little trouble as possible. So I'm going to need actual evidence about this.
And were you ever able to uncover any kind of plot to kill Miss Barnes?
No.
Did you ever find anything regarding Miss Mims that she wanted to do this, thought about doing this, made a plan to do this?
There was never an indication, nothing during the investigation showed that there was a plan to kill her. We found numerous text messages amongst the parties that Ms. Mims and Mrs. Barnes didn't get along, but I would expect that.
Yes, I would place that blame squarely at Mr. Barnes' feet. I have no further.
Well, you told that detective, I'm sure you being sassy all about Mr. Barnes is really, going to help your case. Again, I think I'm going to have a visceral love-hate relationship with this lawyer. I like her contempt of court faces. I do not like this unrelenting, smug attitude and these hints of, I get it. I can imagine that Kendra, with a relationship partner that has laid hands on her, according to her testimony, I am sure that she was scared. But she still did this. She still had the entire time between August the 1st is when the fire pit happened, 1st or 2nd. So she still had all this time between August 1st and September 10th that she could have called the police and said, look, I had to be a part of this. I am freaking scared. Help me. She knew from September 10th to September 14th, before they decided to leave town and, completely leave because it was getting a little heated where they were, because they were the last 3 people to see Jessica. That is what she's being charged with. I have no doubt that Brandon was a nightmare monster. No doubt whatsoever. But we have to take responsibility. And she knew that a mother, being a mother, was looking for their child, and she did nothing to ease that fellow mother's pain. I'm sorry, but you are an adult, and you do something like that. You lie to the police, you go with the party, dark triad line, then I'm sorry, you're going to have to pay. Now, she could maybe have tried to turn state's evidence, I don't know, but her lawyer's just smug little attitude is off-putting.
Hey, police court, Your Honor. Just want to clear up one thing. At the beginning of your testimony, were you at the incident, the civil disturbance incident on July 31st?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that civil, what kind of civil disturbance was it?
When Officer Bishop and I showed up, Mrs. Barnes, Jessica Barnes, was laying in the street, all her belongings with her, and it was at the residence next to her mother's address at 456 Jackson. At that time, both Brandon Barnes and Jessica Barnes were placed on trespass notice from 456 Jackson, where the mother and her other siblings resided. Brandon Barnes was present while we were dealing with that, and ultimately waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Ms. Mims had arrived on scene. She stayed separated from where we were dealing with Jessica and Brandon.
Okay, was that like a shouting match? Were they going at each other? What kind of, when you say civil disturbance, I'm just trying to get an idea of what was actually going on.
Apparently, Brandon had brought Jessica back to the residence with all her belongings, where he was leaving her, and his intention initially was he was leaving. While we were on scene, and it was more than an hour, he wanted to bring her with him. She had made indications that she wanted to, Jessica had made indications that she wanted to hurt herself, which is when we asked for the ambulance to come on scene.
Was that incident recorded on body cam?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was that turned over as part of this whole case file?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go then now to the initial contact you had with Brandon, Victoria, and Kendall, where Victoria made the written statement. Was all of that on body cam and recorded?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and turned over to the solicitor's office?
Yes, sir.
All right, the GPS trackers on the cars. Now, when you initially answered the state's question, you said that Brandon Barnes was the registered owner of the HHR, and that then later, during the cross, you said Brandon Barnes and Mr. Heron, and I'm just trying to make sure I get this right. Was he actually registered owner, or was he just a co-signer on a loan?
Give me just a second.
No problem.
We will have it.
It's another 10. Okay, there's a stack like 800 pounds.
Mr. Heron was a co-signer.
Okay.
Both vehicles.
If I told you that, looking at the tax records, that Brandon Barnes is the only listed person for the HHR, but that Mr. Heron and then Ms. Mims are on the registration for the Kia Forte, would that surprise you?
No.
Okay. And so were you able to, if Mr. Heron was on some sort of note, were you able to collect that note to verify that Mr. Heron had some sort of interest in the HHR?
I don't recall if we got that.
Okay. Because, you would agree that probably can't put trackers into random people's cars.
Correct.
Okay. Did you, what kind of GPS trackers were they? Were they like air tags? Were they magnetic devices?
I asked Mr. Heron about the device, and he didn't answer that question.
Okay.
And it wasn't our device, so honestly, I didn't care.
So, but once it became clear that the HHR and the Forte to some extent were used in furtherance of this investigation, were those devices collected and put into evidence?
Negative.
Why not?
They were owned by Mr. Heron.
Well, so are the force multipliers that people use to unalive people. Like, look, I'm sorry, I was going to take the unalivened weapon, but he owns it. I get what he's saying here rather inelegantly is that, this was not a suspect or anything in the crime. So, if he didn't willingly give those over, we would have to have some reason to take those. Now, I don't know if that gets into property rights and all this other stuff. I don't know if they can take them if they get a search warrant. I don't know why they didn't take them. That does seem to be a bit of an oversight, a big one. And I hope to goodness that despite Brandon Barnes being the registered owner of the HHR, I think Mr. Heron was still on the cosign or the lease for it. So hopefully that will give him some standing, because if they can throw out this GPS tracking data, I don't know if they have a case anymore, other than if they can link these individuals to those different areas, especially the quarry, without it. And I don't know what they would be able to use or that kind of thing.
Just to get to some statements that I read, I believe in your interview with Mr. Heron, he described Brandon at one point as manipulative and narcissistic with women.
And if his lips are moving, he's lying.
And if his lips are moving, he's lying. Also, in an interview with Jessica's mother, talked about Jessica being physically abused by Brandon, and then provided a picture, which I believe is actually in evidence that I've seen,
Yes.
of black eye. You remember interviewing a Julia Palmer, who dated Brandon between August and November of 2023. I believe she stated that Brandon had put a cigarette on her before they broke up.
It was a phone interview. And she had said that she had been involved with him for a short period of time, 2 or 3 months. And at some point, he had put out a cigarette on one of her legs, asked her if she'd ever reported the incident. She said no.
Now,
How far are we going to go back in the?
we're not, I'm done with that.
In time?
This is as far back, that's my last question as far as that, and I've only got a few more, Your Honor. In your testimony, in the beginning, you said that you got to the Twin Lakes location based off the phone data, or the tracker data.
Yes, sir.
In your report, stated that a confidential source had said that Brandon was at Twin Lakes on August the 3rd. Was there a confidential source?
Mr. Henry.
Mr. Herring. Okay, that clears that up. Just because it can be a little bit confusing at times, well, let me ask this first. You said that a private entity was used as, for the cadaver dog. Do you remember what entity that was?
No, it's not my head, sir.
Okay. And were they paid by the department? Were they paid by SLED? Do you have any of that information?
Voluntarily.
And you said that the remains were identified by dental ID based off the 3 teeth that were found.
The 3 teeth and a piece of the jaw.
Do you know who did that ID?
It's in the report.
Okay.
I saw the name last night, but I don't recall off the top of my head.
Was there any sort of DNA identification?
Ultimately, SLED did the DNA, yes, sir.
What actual, and you may not know every little piece, but what actual remains were collected from that burn site other than the piece of the jawbone with the teeth?
I can't answer that. While that search was being conducted out of Twin Lakes, myself and Officer Bishop were doing a search over at Lower Drive, so it was being conducted simultaneously.
Were any large remains found, larger bone?
Not that I'm aware of.
Now, during one of the interviews, I believe, maybe Ms. Tippett had said that they had purchased bleach to clean up the bodily fluids.
Yes, sir.
It's my understanding that the pool house was carpeted.
Yes, sir.
Was there any evidence of any bleach being used, any bleached out areas?
Not when you SLED forensics, use their luminol and whatever else they use.
Okay, so to your knowledge, there was no areas of carpet like it looked like someone poured bleach on?
No, sir.
Part of your report mentions that you had received a tip on September 19th regarding a potential sighting of Jessica Barnes at the Dollar General. Was that ever reviewed, or was video ever pulled from that Dollar General at that point in time?
No, sir. I conducted that interview on the phone, and when I asked the gentleman if he would, how certain he was, he said, yeah, I don't remember the percentage he gave, and I said, well, would it change your mind any if I told you that we had evidence that would indicate that you did not see what you believe so? And he said, no, he was pretty sure that he had seen Miss Barnes.
Okay. And that would have been before 9/20. I'm sorry, that would have been before Miss Barnes would have been identified, though.
Positive identified, yes, sir.
Did you ever get that individual's name?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so his information is in a report?
Is in the report, yes, sir.
Okay. What about the identification of a woman, I believe she's described as looking haggard and smoking a Marlboro cigarette, that was seen on?
Please never let the description of me be haggard with a Marlboro cigarette. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. I'm liking these descriptions from the witnesses, because that's about how I would describe someone.
September 20th. and who said that she collected, I believe, 3 trash bags worth of stuff from the area.
Right.
Was she ever identified?
No, sir, again, on the 20th, this was information that was reported to me, I put it in the report. Information I received was that a SLED agent was stopped by this woman as she was driving by and said that she had found a number of trash bags at some location.
Okay, but there was no idea what was in the trash bags, whether they were trash, whether they were potential evidence, whether they were
No, sir.
remains.
And she was never identified, nor viewed.
And then, I guess my last question would be, do you remember Ms. Mims giving a statement to police that basically said that Brandon had told Ms. Mims and Ms. Tippett that if they had talked to police or said anything about this, that basically they were all going down with it?
That was their statement, yes, sir.
For one quick second, Your Honor. I have no further questions for this witness.
I have 2 or 3 follow-ups if you'll allow me. Officer Westcott, in Ms. Wise's questioning, she was a little bit unsure on the date of the actual murder and when it took place. So I just want to run through some stuff that I've gathered from the reports and in my discussions with law enforcement. The civil disturbance happened on 7/31, correct?
Correct.
And then
On Jackson Street.
Then at some point early on 8/1, that's when Miss Barnes is wandering around the downtown Anderson area.
Yes, sir.
And on 8/1, Mr. Barnes picks her up, correct?
Yes, sir.
So,
In the morning.
okay. And then 8/1 passes by and there's, in my review of the evidence, there's the HHR or the Kia, one of the two, is door dashing late at night on 8/1. Does that sound correct to you if you
Yes.
know of that? Okay. And then we go into 8/2 and Kendall leaves for work. And let me take one step back. On 8/1, we've got Jessica on Ring doorbell camera and Brandon returning back to the pool house.
Yes, sir.
And then on 8/2, Kendall leaves for work and Jessica is alive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You said it sounds correct. Are you not 100% sure? Or you,
I believe that is.
okay. And then, so Kendall goes to work on 8/2 and she's alive. Kendall returns on 8/2 and that's when she sees Jessica's body in the plastic bin, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it seems as though she was murdered sometime between when Kendall left for work, the morning of the 2nd, and she comes home from work after, 5 o'clock on the 2nd.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the next thing I want to go to is also in Ms. Wise's questioning is she talked about how Kendall never actually said that she knew that Brandon choked Jessica to death. That's what the questioning was, correct?
Yes, sir.
But in her interview, did she ultimately admit to Brandon telling her what happened?
Yes, sir.
And so what did Kendall, in her interview, finally, after telling a few stories that weren't exactly true, what did Kendall say Brandon told her?
That he was trying to restrain her in some type of WWE move where his arm had come.
And there you have it, WWE. We have the trifecta of all of the hill chuck things. We've got the marble and the camel and the love quadrangle and the baby daddy drama, and now we've got a WWE move gone wrong.
Come around her neck, and that's how she had been choked, strangled.
And that's what Kendall told law enforcement in her interview.
Correct.
So she ultimately told you.
The manner in which it took place.
Okay. Did she make any did she make any demonstrations of what Brandon told her that you know of?
Kendall did not. Victoria did.
Victoria did, okay. All right, and let me go to, you said you did not collect, this is now Mr. Williams' question, you did not collect the physical trackers.
Correct.
Mr. Harron either still has them or something along those
As
lines?
far as I know.
Okay, but did y'all extract and review the data from those trackers?
Yes, sir. SLED got that data.
And y'all have that data?
You'll have
Yes,
that.
Okay. And that's the ultimate data that shows you where the remains were?
Yes, sir.
And who, I think you testified to it, just to make sure, who positively identified the remains? Because there weren't many remains. Who positively identified them?
Give me a second.
Thanks. This dress has a bunch of wintry stuff on it, so I figured I have to wear it. And I have been stalking this dress. I am not going to lie, because I was not going to pay $140 for it, like Unique Vintage wanted me to pay $140 for it. So I ended up getting it, I think, for about $30 because they were having half off their clearance. So, hey. So I definitely needed to wear it before winter ends. I'm hoping by wearing it and buying this in long sleeve, it will turn warm, and then, you know, we won't have any more winter. Yes, you did. So, I think that Slumpy McGrumpy, I apologize. Apparently, her name is Kendall and not Kendra. Sorry. But I think that she is kind of getting fed by her lawyer. That, you know, you shouldn't be in prison. You know, you were trying to do the right thing. I'm going to get you out of here. You know, you were X, Y, and Z. And I am not neglecting to take into account that Brandon seems like a horrible person to be saddled with in even a quadrangle relationship. So I'm not taking that away. But it's this lawyer seems like she wants to push that just because she was in a terrible relationship, she has no responsibility. And I don't agree. So I think that we're going to see just a bunch of sullenness and sort of immature behavior from both of these young women. They seem to be fairly both emotionally immature. The other one has been somewhat stoic, Victoria, but this Kendall seems to be giving off some real just attitude. And I don't know if it's coming from the lawyer or I'm just noticing them both having attitudes at the same time. I do not know. And all of the articles that I have been looking at give Jessica's age as 20. I am guessing Brandon to be in his early to mid 20s. These two women do look possibly late teens, early 20s, but I haven't been able to get any clear answers on that yet.
I don't have it right here. It was an email, whomever the remains were sent to identify had an email the Anderson County coroner. Once the coroner, or it might have been Pickens County coroner, Candy Kelly, once they had the email, that was when the plan was made to pick the three up for the interview, now that we had positively identified the woman as Jessica Barnes.
And I don't know the name either, just sitting here, but wasn't it someone at Clemson University that had to look at the remains just due to the state they were in?
Professor Wisensee, who had come onto the scene initially, I positively identified human remains on the 20th of September. I'm sorry, 19th of September, the initial search. The ultimate positive identification of the dental remains, that was sent to someone who was in Georgia.
Okay.
I believe it's Georgia.
But those dental remains were Jessica's, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then this is my last question. Mr. Bloom was talking about the bleach and the bleach being purchased and there not really being much evidence of bleach, but my understanding is that in Kendall Mims' interview, she told law enforcement that when she came back to the house, it smelled like the room had been bombed with bleach. Does
Yes.
that sound correct to you?
Yes, sir. I
And
didn't
that-
see that.
And that Brandon said that he had bombed the room for bugs.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Then why are you in there? When you set off flea bombs, you're not supposed to be in there when you pull the little tab. I hesitate to say public service announcement, but yes, if you are going to have to flea bomb or, basically fumigate your house, don't stay inside while fumigating. And if you're using bleach, also don't stay inside while fumigating. This is an educational channel, isn't it?
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Brief redirect, Your Honor. I'm so
I'm sorry?
I said a brief redirect, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'm so very sorry. During Ms. Mims' interview, she also said that it smelled very strongly of like ant killer or bleach. Do you remember her saying that exactly?
Yes, ma'am.
So it could have been either one. She wasn't exactly sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, these three brain trusts wouldn't put away any open food containers or nothing. So, I'm not convinced they didn't actually use Raid Ant Killer while being inside, probably eating a snack. Oh my gosh, what is wrong with these people? And lady lawyer, snarkiness is good when you use it sparingly. It's like a sprinkle. It's it's that little zhuzh you give. It's not all the time. Then you become off-putting and shrill, but we've got some chicken neck action going on.
And last question. During Ms. Mims' interview, she did state that Mr. Barnes had tried to restrain Mrs. Barnes.
Yes, ma'am.
But she stated over and over and over again that Mrs. Barnes was still moving when Mr. Barnes left the room. Or is that incorrect?
That, I'm not sure. Again, I wasn't present during her interview, and she wasn't present during the incident.
Oh. Okay. All right, thank you. No further questions?
No.
One question, why did you get the accessory after the fact and mispresent of a felony? Aren't they the same elements, except one is murder, A, B, C, and the other one is just felony?
Honestly, Your Honor, I had never heard of his prison. SLED spoke with the solicitor. Solicitor said, go forward with these charges.
Is that what y'all want to do? Y'all going,
It's my understanding that we are aware of the accessory and the misprision issue, and there's a possibility there's some case law saying you cannot be guilty of those two. That's my representation to you right now.
you would have to elect the charge.
I believe that's correct.
The solicitor, you can say,
And my also understanding is that the jury could pick between the two at a trial, and that it can't be both. So.
Yeah, Judge, if we ultimately go to trial on this case, you have to look at it in a vacuum, and of course it'll all depend on the testimony that comes out and ultimately what the jury decides. But you can, the circuit court can structure the jury instructions so that they, if they pick one, or if they don't pick one, they'd move on to the next one and vice versa.
both have to be indicted no matter what.
Yes, sir.
So notice of preliminary hearing, then,
And that's way on down the line.
that's way down the line, but, I'm just not sure why, roughly saying one is common law and one is codified, as far as I consider.
I would say that the accessory part is more of an active role, and the misprision of a felony is more of a neglect of duty aspect of it. So I think the defense would make some arguments.
You can have a felony without being an ABC felony. There is a lesser felony, but that's not included in accessory. These may be semantical arguments anyway. Anything about on the lines?
Just briefly, Your Honor, the only evidence they have of Ms. Mims knowing about this murder occurring was based upon her own testimony in her own interview that she gave willingly and voluntarily misled to law enforcement. However, at no point in time during her interview did she state that she actually knew that Brandon Barnes killed Jessica Barnes. And her statement over and over and over again was that as far as she knew, Mrs. Barnes was still alive, even after Brandon tried to subdue her. Based upon that, I would ask that you consider dismissing the accessory after the fact of murder, because the only evidence they have that she knew that it was a murder was based upon what she said, that she knew that he restrained her, that she did testify.
Wait, if I'm following this correctly, if I go to my friend's house and she has said body in Tupperware, so same exact parameters. I go to my friend's house, she happens to have container O body in her house. Now, she tells me that this body happened to die of self reasons, okay? You can't get, just because she was told that it was self-deletion doesn't negate that she was an accessory after the fact of murder. Just because she didn't know it was murder doesn't mean she gets to change, how it's charged. Unless I am getting this completely wrong, but that's what I'm trying to figure out, if that's what her lawyer is contending, because that sounds dumb to me. Because again, if I help my friend dispose of said, body in tote, I'm still an accessory after the fact, even if I thought that it was natural causes, if it turns out to be, red rum. At least that's how I understand the law. Maybe there are levels of red rum knowledge. I have no idea.
Or state over and over again that Mrs. Barnes was still alive once the restraining was over with. And Judge, to be guilty of accessory after the fact of murder, she'd have to know that there was a murder that occurred.
Nothing.
And Judge, I would just respond to the motion related to accessory is that I would agree that you have to acknowledge that a felony has occurred. When you come home from work and there's a deceased person inside of a plastic tote, and then you tell law enforcement that that person who committed the murder ultimately demonstrated for you how they choked them, and you demonstrate that choke for law enforcement, and then a murder charge is ultimately brought, that it just sort of defies logic that you don't know that a felony has occurred and a murder has occurred. Right?
All right. How do you find a problem?
We're going to move the closed captions down here because the look of, well, now I hadn't made that logic jump, damn, but that kind of killed my argument. Yeah, that is the look like, but you're making my client look bad. And I told her that I would use my lawyer words to get her out of this.
That a felony has occurred and that a murder has occurred, Your Honor.
All right. How do you find probable cause on all three charges for both defendants? Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Well, I guess that bit did not work. She's like, look, but she said it was, it was natural causes. She said it, I swear. So there you go. Let's see if they will give us the next hearing date.
Thank you for your help.
Now, I don't know why they don't have Brandon in there, but that's all we have thus far. It will be interesting to watch this trial. Now, it looks like it's not going to be happening for a good while, but at least when we do come back to this, I can, have another murder board kind of ready. But definitely this is shaping up to be a pretty wild case and a pretty wild, just full of legal arguments. Again, were the trackers there? Can Mr. Heron says that he has reason that he should be able to put on these trackers legally? I'm sure the state would not have moved forward with evidence they cannot, show. I hope. You would think. You never know. Let's be real. You never know. But hopefully we will get some answers in this as we go through the trial. But I am glad that we were able to kind of sort out what was going on with all the shenanigans and give you a little bit firmer of a grasp on what this case will be about. Okay, Maddie B says South Carolina has laws requiring the coroner be contacted at time of death. Claiming you didn't know how it happened does negate the requirement to contact authorities. Okay, thank you, Maddie B. I did not know that. So that will end this particular stream. Let me go ahead and make sure that you are set up for my next stream today, because the boys don't have school, so I get to, have fun shenanigans streams all days. I will be having a shenanigans stream starting at 1, so I'm going to go get some chores done and do all of that fun stuff. So if you want to, just click notification on that stream and then go on your merry way on the interwebs. I don't know. I am going to do some of the same things, get a couple of new stories out for you guys, and then I will see you back on a shenanigans stream. So hopefully it did clear things up. It did actually clear things up for me when I was writing things down and going through it. So you're welcome for that. I hope you have a lovely day. Stay warm and, stay safe and toasty. Bye, you guys. Aren't y'all leaving?